Ask big, ask for big money. Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to ask for a lot of money in a product or service that you're offering. A lot of people are intimidated to ask for being paid well. So I'm going to explain how to do it. There are reasons, there are situations where you should be demanding to be paid quite well. And so I'm going to explain how to set things up so that you can get to that point, so that you can get to a point where you have something that is valuable enough that you should be quite well paid for it, okay? So the one thing I want to say as we start off here is I'm going to use a specific example, but it works. The technique works for anything, really. You just have to apply the steps for whatever product or service or combination that you're trying to sell. So let's dive in here. So in this example, this was not for me. Not long out of college, I was teaching software engineering. So that's the specific example I'm going to use throughout. But this will work for any product or service, literally or virtually any product or service. Not long out of college, I was teaching software engineering night classes. I was working as a software engineer during the day, offering these classes through the local university. So the students who showed up to take classes from me were people working in high-tech companies. This was in Silicon Valley. So all my students were working in the field, okay? So many of these students would request that, or would inquire as to whether or not I would be open to conducting training at their location, at their employer, obviously for pay. And so these requests started to roll in. I wasn't sure what to do with it because it was new. I mean, I was teaching software engineering. I was working as a software engineer during the day. And I was working as a consultant, so my schedule was flexible. So it was feasible, anyways, to be able to fit in some customized training. So the service that I'm going to use in this example was software training, but this will work. This technique will work if you do it right for literally anything. So I didn't know what to charge. I get these requests. Will you please come and conduct training at our company? I didn't know what to charge. I had no experience doing this. So I just decided, okay, I want $400 an hour. I just said, I want $400 an hour, and nobody batted an eye. So I probably didn't ask enough. So this was in the early mid 1990s. $400 an hour was notable. Now you have to keep in mind, this is different from showing up at your job every day, or in my case as a consultant, often I was working from home. I was writing software at home. So I had to go to the trouble of preparing specialized notes, commuting to that particular employer's location. In some cases, they were kind of far away. Like I was located in the South Bay in Silicon Valley, and I had clients in the North Bay, north of San Francisco, in some cases. So the commute was not, there was a noteworthy commute. So I felt that what I was asking for was justifiable. So when you are trying to figure out what to charge, it can help, instead of doing it in sort of a random way like I did, it can help to have some justification. So I did a lot of this. I got a lot of my students who would show up, who would take a class from me, offered through the university, would say, we'd like you to come back and conduct some training at our company. And so I had to get used to, I had to figure out, can I justify this? Because to me, $400 an hour seemed like it's a substantial rate of pay. $400 an hour, if you're working full time, that's $800,000 a year in income. And in the early mid-1990s, I felt, I should be able to justify this. So I started studying what other options were available for these companies. And I found that the type of knowledge that I had, it was relatively new software that I was working in the area and I was teaching. It was relatively new. The options out there in the marketplace for companies, you could not buy this training for less than $1,000 a head. And often it was $2,000 or more. So, a supervisor at a tech company could say, I need 2 or 3 of my software engineers to learn this new area. It's going to cost me $2,000 per head, $6,000, right? So once I noticed what was available in the marketplace, I realized, okay, the reason I'm getting so many requests at $400 an hour, which seemed like a lot to me, was the value was obvious to the client. So all those companies where I went to the actual employer of my students and taught on site at that company, they saw obvious value because their option to substitute was thousands of dollars. And what I told my clients, I said, I want $400 an hour, and I'm not going to keep track of how many of your employees show up to take the class. So in other words, the company would say, we're going to have this guy do some training, and we can put as many of our employees into his class, and he's not going to charge us on a per head basis. So the value was obvious to these tech companies. Okay, so in this case, the value was, this was specialized knowledge. Now, the thing I want to make a point here and say that when you're selling something and you want a lot of money for it, and you have specialized knowledge in a new area that is not widely available and maybe inconvenient to acquire, maybe quite expensive to acquire, then you can ask for a lot of money. So that's part of the value if you have specialized knowledge that's not common in the marketplace and that is in demand. Because in this case, this particular software was in high demand in the marketplace. So there have been a lot of examples of software and other technologies that have become extremely popular, like blockchain is one of them. Crypto technology is another one. There have been a lot of things in the technology world that are suddenly in high demand, and if you have experience in those areas, that's kind of where I was at with this. I had specialized knowledge, and I was a practitioner. I wasn't just somebody teaching a class about something I didn't know about. I was actually producing products that were being sold in the marketplace, software products that people could buy. So specialized knowledge in a new area that's in demand. And one hint is if you're involved with a product or a service and you're paying high salaries to people to work in those areas, that's a hint that if you sell that product or service, you can ask for a lot of money, ask for big money. If the salaries are low, not so much. You can't really ask a lot for a fast food restaurant sort of training because those employees, they're not highly paid. It's basically labor. It's not even skilled labor. So if a customer can see the value, ask them to pay for it. That's one of the messages here. Now, I stumbled into this, okay? I didn't set out with this knowledge that, okay, I'm doing this unique, I've got this experience in this unique area. It's in high demand right now. So obviously these clients, these companies can see the value. I'm gonna nail them. I'm gonna try and get as much as I can. That's not the way I came up with my number there. So that's what you want to think about, is go out into the marketplace and find out what what options are available. And if you can figure out a way to make your product or service more convenient, more timely, more affordable, you can ask for a lot of money. So the enticement for the offer is you should try to make your offer hard to refuse. Okay. In my case, this was an easy example because I was in a popular area and I wasn't asking for, $400 an hour sounded like a lot to me at the time. I'd only been out of college like 3 years and I was starving at college. But in reality, that was too cheap. I could have asked for a lot more. So make your offer hard to refuse. In this example, the training that was available was $1,000 or more per head, per employee of my client companies. So for any product or service, and this is the general case, this is kind of one of the big takeaways of this video. For any product or service where you're trying to get paid big dollars for, offer some kind of arbitrage on the price. In other words, offer a price that's more affordable than what's available in the marketplace for an equally valuable sort of service or product, or something that's more convenient. And this is an example. So in this kind of training, even if even if my client was willing to pay $2,000 a head, you often had to sign up for weeks or months in advance, and then you had to wait for the course to actually be conducted. So that downtime, if you have someone in your company who really needs that skill, like now, so I offered this arbitrage on convenience and timeliness, because I could do the training like on very short notice, and the convenience arbitrage was, instead of sending employees to some training company in maybe another state, I was in the Bay Area, I could actually commute to the client company. So my price was an arbitrage, I was low priced. The convenience, I could actually drive to the employer's job site, and the timeliness, I could conduct training on short notice. So that was a combination of, to try to substitute for this in the marketplace was very difficult. So the whole value picture, if you have a specialized product or service, that's when you can ask for a lot of money. Now, if you have a really common, for example, if there is some sort of training for automobile sales, like there are companies that sell training to help people who work at a car dealership sell cars better. Not sure how valuable that skill is. because in a lot of car dealerships, the big money is made on repairs, not on selling the cars. So I'm not sure if dealerships will pay a lot. So if you were trying to sell that kind of training, in this case training, I'm not sure you could command a lot of money for that, big dollar. But if you have some sort of specialized product or service that's rare and is in demand, and there are high salaries being paid for people with that knowledge, you're in good shape. So in my case, this was new software taught by someone who was experienced actually working in that area. That was me. If it's not easy to find a substitute, and that can be simply because the price is cheaper or more convenient, delivered to you on your job site, or I can do it next week, the timeliness, right? So if it's not easy to find a substitute, you can ask big, ask for a lot of money. So I probably could have asked for $1,000 an hour or more, because in some, there was one company in particular that they had so many of their employees. It was a huge company, so I conducted the training. They had so many of their employees in that class. And I did quite well. I taught for an entire week at that company. I did quite well, but in hindsight, I really shortchanged myself. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was 3 years out of college, you know? So, but the point is, if it's not easy to find a substitute because of a price you're offering is better, or because you're doing something that's more convenient or more timely, you should be able to ask for a lot of money. Now, another issue is, do you have a track record of successful outcomes? So here's another type of example: film directing. If you want to be a movie director, the first time you direct a film, they're not going to pay you very well, right? You may not get paid at all. In fact, you may have to do it just to get the experience. If you, however, direct Jaws, or if you have a very successful movie, all of a sudden you have a track record of successful outcomes, and you can charge a lot. So in my case, the way this applied to me is I was working on products, commercial products, that were being shipped and being sold kind of all over the place. They were popular products. So I did have a track record of successful outcomes. So the scale of your successful outcomes does not have to be grand. You know, it doesn't have to be a hit movie or a hit software product. It can be something more local. If you're developing real estate and you're a very successful developer in your region, you know, that can be plenty. So I wanted to cover this because a lot of people shortchange themselves like I did. You know, in the early mid-90s, $400 an hour seemed like a lot, but the reality is I shortchanged myself, and I didn't really have any experience. But if you follow this, if you can figure out how to, I mean, the steps would be this: have some sort of knowledge that's in demand, that you have experience with, and hopefully some track record of successful outcomes, and then offer that with an arbitrage on the price. In other words, make the price more affordable than what is otherwise available, more convenient, more timely, or some combination of those. So that's how you can ask for a lot of money. Now, if you have just a generic sort of product or service, it's a little more difficult to to ask for a huge payday. But the point is, you want to set yourself up so that you can. At some point in your life, you should try to set yourself up so that you can ask for a big payday for some sort of knowledge and skill that you have, that you can offer with a more competitive price, a more convenient delivery, something more timely, something more that you can deliver on the customer schedule, not on your schedule, but something that works for the customer. So I hope that helped. If you have any questions about this, I've got direct experience with this. And this was, I did quite well with this because I was teaching at night, and then I was doing this. I kind of did this training for these companies all over Silicon Valley, and I did quite well with that. And for someone who was not long out of college, it was pretty cool. But there was a company waiting to be made for that, and I sort of got away from that. What ended up happening is I ended up going back to graduate school. That's what happened. I sort of got out of that and went back to grad school. But there was a company waiting to be built, and so the way you would do this is you would say to yourself, I'm working in an industry that has a lot of value. And there's a lot of specialized knowledge that I could acquire, and then I could sell it. And one of the things you can do if you're in technology is there are these companies called value-added resellers. They take software and they combine it with hardware systems, and they sell it as a package to corporate clients. So, for example, if you know Linux, the operating system, and you know how to put Linux servers together, you could sell the whole package to client companies as a value-added reseller and get paid quite well for that. So if you have any questions, please post questions in the comments. I'll try to get to those. I really want to thank everyone for watching and have a great day.